Ladies and gentlemen, this is my weekly commentary. This has been a really interesting week, especially when it comes down to this trial. Chicago was really on edge, but this jury did come back and do the right thing. The jurors convicted Jason Van Dyke on second-degree murder of Laquan McDonald. And they said the reason why they did was because his testimony did not match the video. But ladies and gentlemen, isn't that the case all across the country? It really is. We have seen that probably more times than we ever wanted to in this lifetime. But this time, there was a conviction. How do I feel about that? Bittersweet. I'm glad the conviction came down on Jason Van Dyke because he surely deserved it. He was just one of those rogue, over-the-top, violent cops on the force. And when you look at this man's background, he should never have been a cop in the first place. There were many issues with this man. He was not right. He should never have been a cop. But there's many Jason Van Dykes on police forces nationwide, and nothing is ever done about them. I remember during the time when a lot of Black people getting pulled over in New Jersey had made really worldwide publicity all over the place. There was a state police officer that had all kinds of complaints against him. And on top of that, he was an alcoholic. And he crashed into someone. He was at fault for the accident. All of these infractions, and they kept this man on the force. And America does this, ladies and gentlemen. If Jason Van Dyke was dealt with long before now, Laquan McDonald probably would still be alive. But in this country, when it comes down to cops, they turn the other way. Cops are glorified in America. You should never glorify police officers. And they don't deserve to be glorified. What they need to do is get out here and do their job. The only time we see cops going above and beyond to serve and protect is when it comes down to their own, when they're in trouble. They go overboard trying to protect them. Now, when you get into this story, the jurors, which I felt was a very imbalanced jury, especially for some place like Chicago. But they came up with second-degree murder with 16 counts of aggravated battery for one shot fired at McDonald. So, he pretty much buried himself with his own testimony. And you saw that on my last video that I did on this, I showed part of a testimony when Van Dyke was on the stand. And I tell you what, I saw more believable lies from children. Okay. They kept Van Dyke on the police force in Chicago for 13 years. 13 years of him terrorizing the Chicago neighborhoods. 13 years of this. You know, when these men get guns in their hands and they already have an inflated ego, that's what makes them dangerous. You know, and like many cops, just like him out here working, he probably thought he was untouchable. He went on for so long and he was practically not touched until now. Okay. When he gave his testimony about how menacing Laquan McDonald was with his little teeny knife, the knife was very small. The jurors said that's when they no longer believed him. Okay. And you can tell he was trying his best to over-exaggerate everything about Laquan McDonald's. Oh, his eyes were bugging out. Oh, and he was walking towards me. His eyes were bugging out. He kept saying his eyes were bugging out. You know, he was trying very hard to make Laquan McDonald look like the boogeyman was coming towards him. So the foreman of the jury was white, a white woman. And they're saying that the first vote was 7 for conviction, 2 for not guilty, and 3 undecided. And the jurors worked from there. And that's pretty much normal when you get into deliberation. Everybody does a vote and you see where everybody stand. So in this case, which I'm really shocked, the majority of them said guilty. So they made a decision between first and second degree murder. Rather than first degree, they chose second degree. Okay. And they said they had to consider what was going on in Van Dyke's mind at the time of the shooting. So I guess they did whatever they felt was the right thing to do. The one thing I do not agree with is this is damn Chicago. Do you know the black woman was the only one on the jury? And this is Chicago. See, this is why we talk about the all-white juries, because you always make sure, even if it's a mostly black area where these shootings take place, you will still flood the jury with a bunch of white people. This is Chicago, and you could only put one black juror in Chicago? And this is why we say everything about the system is rigged. Because it is. Van Dyke went down because he was stupid. He was a reckless cop that didn't care. But his days of trolling on the streets are over. And if anything else, I'm glad for Chicago. But it's still a bittersweet victory because, ladies and gentlemen, This should be happening all over America. One victory, it ain't enough. It's not enough for all of the death and carnage at the hands of our unarmed men and women from these cops. One out of all the cases that we saw just over the last few months. It's not enough. It's not enough. And at this point, ladies and gentlemen, 10 would not be enough, because we have been enduring this for centuries. So this is rare. Don't be surprised if you don't see it anymore for the next few years. They always throw you one dog bone, but that's it. Oh boy. This trial went on for 10 days. 10 days. And Van Dyke just thought he was going to peddle his bullshit lies on that stand, and he was going to walk away with his family and just go and live his life like he's done nothing wrong. Well, all I have to say is, you got one bad cop off the street in Chicago. Unfortunately, it's not going to make a difference because of all the rest of them that you have. Hollow victory, as far as I'm concerned. Now let's go to this next article. This came out, ladies and gentlemen, like over the last 2 days. Amber Geiger, back in the news. Dallas police, once again, ticking a lot of people off, will not release Geiger's 911 call. They won't release it. And this is why everybody keeps making the accusation that Texas Rangers and the Dallas police have done nothing in the interests of Botham Jean. You have done everything to shield and protect Amber Geiger. It was not until there was a public outcry that she was even fired. The police chief talking about, I can't fire her. I have never heard that from any police chief in this nation, that they can't discipline or even fire their own people. We haven't heard one thing about them investigating Amber Geiger or going to her location to do an investigation search. All we've seen is them. We haven't heard about them going through her apartment to see what was there. Did she have weed in there? You haven't heard about them searching her car. The only thing we heard were the cops went over there, helped her pack up and move out of there. Yes, the police officers helped her move. So, as it stands, ladies and gentlemen, Dallas has decided not to release the 911 call. And there's another thing that they're doing. They're not releasing the autopsy report on Botham Jean. That's also in the headlines, too. They won't release his autopsy report. Now, what was Botham Jean doing in the dark in his apartment? Actually, he was not sleeping, ladies and gentlemen. According to all of the information that I read, Botham Jean was sitting on his couch with his computer. That's what he was doing, just sitting in the dark. And many of us do that. We sit in the dark, not only with computers, with cell phones and everything else. And he was just doing what a lot of people across this country do. So he was just sitting on his sofa with all the lights out, and he was on his computer, chilling out in his apartment when this incident happened. When Amber Geiger knocked, he was wide awake. He was not sleeping. Amber Geiger has probably come up with the worst story I have ever heard from a cop in my life. First, in that parking garage, you go to the wrong floor, and then you go in the wrong apartment. And they have showed from aerial shots, the top floor of that parking garage has no roof. The third floor does. How do you confuse the two? Botham Jean had a red carpet outside of his door. They never did show us shots of how it looked outside of Amber Geiger's door. You notice that? They have completely glossed over that. They never showed you what the outside of her apartment looks like. They only showed you his. Not only the Texas Rangers, the Dallas police, even their media is being very careful when it comes down to this undeserving murderer, Amber Geiger. They're all being very careful with her. And she doesn't deserve it. She's a killer. I hope she goes to jail, and the people that she put in jail are right there waiting for her ass. Okay, that case burns me up. Now, this last one came out. Bette Midler apologizes for controversial "women are the N-word of the world" tweet. Bette Midler is nothing but your run-of-the-mill racist. If you remember when Joe Jackson died, she went out on the internet to gloat about it and saying the world is better off without him. No, Bet, I think the world would be better off without you. You have once again went out on Twitter and showed your hand as nothing but a hardcore racist. And now you're trying to hide behind, well, that was a lyric from John Lennon. No, you said it. John Lennon is dead. You went out there and put that on Twitter. You're 100% accountable for what you put out there. I'm not even going to read her babbling nonsense that she put out there. But this woman has done nothing but put very questionable things out on social media. And now, because of the high amount of backlash she's getting, she wants to come and apologize. No, Bet, you put out there exactly how you felt. And that word was stuck on our people centuries ago. But Bet is an old relic, hasn't been relevant for a long time, and she is trying to come out and parade in front of us and try to make herself relevant, spoken about again. This woman needs to go and retire and shut the hell up. You are not bringing nothing of value on social media, Bette Midler. What do you expect from some old hag over the hill woman that hasn't been relevant now for well over a few decades? She needs to go somewhere and sit down. Nobody is checking for you, Bette Midler. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell. And I will see you on the next video. Peace, family.